Welcome back, my fellow travelers. This is Make It Destination. My name's Amanda, and this is where I help you make it to your destination. And this week, I am super excited to present to you the best travel TV shows, in my opinion. I was always one of those kids that watched the Travel Channel and was always amazed at how the filmmakers were able to show a place in its beauty and also the problems that were presented for that location. So I'm going to present to you 5 of my favorite TV shows when it comes to travel, but let me know in the comments what travel shows you like, what inspires you. Please don't forget to like this video and make sure you hit the subscribe button because I know you never want to miss out on one of my videos, and hit that notification bell so that you know when I post. So yeah, let's just get into it. I want to keep the intro short and sweet, and we're going to get into the top 5 travel shows that I love. This is my ranking of my top 5. Again, I'm just ranking this based on how they filmed, the content, and also how long they were able to keep my interest. There are some travel shows that I've watched that maybe I'll make a video in the future that I wasn't amazed with and I did have high hopes for. Kind of expected it not to be good. But again, everybody has their own opinion, and honestly, you don't know how good the travel show is going to be until you watch it. So the number 5 slot today is Instant Hotel, and this could be streamed on Netflix. I believe this is a Netflix original, and it's an Australian-based competition show in which they have couples host their Airbnbs. I don't think it's Airbnb out there, but basically their home rental, and they each rank each other based on how adequate the stay was. And then they have 2 experts go in and stay and look around and give their grade, and then whoever wins, I think, receives a vacation, I'm not sure. But this is Australian based, so if you don't want to go to Australia and that's not on your radar, I wouldn't watch this. But what I like about this show is it's very lighthearted, it's a competition show. My family knows this about me. I'm not one of those people who like to get into a TV series, and that's because I'm usually working a lot or going to school or running a YouTube channel. So I don't have time to remember and stick to a storyline very often. So that's why I like this show. You do have to remember certain things, but honestly, it's lighthearted, it's a competition show, and the filmmakers really do a good job of showing different parts of Australia. So when you think of Australia, especially from a US context, we think of Sydney, right? That's like the biggest city there, I believe, and that's the one that everybody kind of sees in their head when it comes to traveling to Australia. But there are different parts to Australia other than Sydney, obviously, and this show does a very good job of showing you inland from Sydney, on the other side of the island, and just various parts that you wouldn't really think about going to until you watch this show. And that's what I like. You're staying in different Airbnbs with these couples. You're seeing what the Airbnb market has to offer there and the features you could receive for different price points. And then also seeing the attractions and the features around the Airbnb, right? These couples are traveling to each one of, their peers' Airbnbs, and they get ranked upon the attractions or features near their Airbnb. So if you want to travel to Australia, I would definitely recommend this show. It did keep my interest for a good amount of time. I unfortunately haven't watched season 2 just because I have been working and running a YouTube channel. But season 1 I thought was spectacular. I honestly love seeing where you could stay in different places, and I think this show really does a good job of that in Australia. So that's my number 5 slot. Now let's get into number. So, like I said before, I think all the rest of the television shows about travel that I'm going to present to you are about food. Now, honestly, when I travel, I'm going to do a video on this. It's about what type of traveler you are, but I'm a foodie type of traveler. I want to see what food a place could offer. I want to try different drinks, different ingredients, and see how the food culture really inspires and influences the tourism culture of that location. So the rest of these are food based, so if that isn't for you, I'm sorry, but I do think food could tell you a lot about a place. So my number 4 spot could be streamed on Netflix, and it's called Street Food. Now, I believe they have an Asia edition and a Latin America edition. I've only watched the Asia edition, but I'm assuming it's most likely similar, the Latin American one to the Asian one. I love how it shows the cultural influence of food on a particular region. Again, the filmmakers do a great job of showing you the local markets, how the food vendors set up. And I think that's very intriguing because it's not something, especially from a US point of view, that we think about on a day-to-day basis. Street food in America is really non-existent unless you're in a big city, and the closest thing I could think of is New York City or LA with food trucks, a hot dog cart. I believe there are halal carts as well in New York City, but it's not really something that's very popular in the US culture. Whereas if you go outside of the US, street food is very predominant and it's very affordable, and it's something that the locals flock to. And I think, at least in my opinion, at least from what I've seen, it's not something I see on social media very often unless it's done in a documentary series or a television series. It's not a glamorous villa in Bali. It's not, you know, a 5 or 6 course meal at a Michelin star restaurant. It's literally you walking on a street, seeing all the different vendors, getting into their craft and loving what they do, and selling you food that maybe you haven't tried before. So that's why I like this series, because in the United States, we don't really have a street food culture. So it really does open your eyes to other parts of the world where street food culture is very predominant, and maybe might inspire you to explore that in your next vacation. Because again, when you have a certain perspective on food and culture, when you go outside of that, you might not want to go outside your comfort zone. But watching this show will give you a little taste of what it's like in the street food culture sense, and maybe it will help you realize, hey, I could go out of my comfort zone one night or 2 nights when I go on travel and just try something I've never eaten before. I also like how they explain the history behind street food culture and how that really has created its own. I think in the first episode she says that it creates its own ecosystem, and when you try to take that away from certain cities in Asia, you could see kind of the disconnection of their society when they try to take out street food. So I really do like learning about the history, and you also hear about the stories of everyday food vendors. You know, might not have always thought they would be a street food vendor, but they kind of fell into it, and honestly, they love and want to perfect their craft. So that's what I like about Street Food Asia, because it helps you learn about a local's perspective of their own street food culture, so that when you go, you have an even greater appreciation for these street food vendors and the hard work that goes behind it. So I love this show. It really does keep your interest. I like how it's filmed. They do have certain parts where they interview people, and then they show the food vendors, you know, doing their thing, how they prepare, and then also the important foods of that region. It's nice because they break it up kind of by the food that they're studying or the food that they're doing a deep dive into. I think that really does help you connect and also stay engaged as an audience, because one of my pet peeves is watching a show and by 5 or 7 minutes in you're already, you know, daydreaming or back into your own world. The truly successful travel shows are the ones that take you outside of your own home, and I think this series really does a good job of that. That's enough of street food. Definitely check it out. I think I already said this, but you can stream it on Netflix. And now we're gonna get into the number 3. So this one I was debating to put into this video, but honestly, it's just one that hits close to home for me, and it's always been a favorite, and I'm always waiting for Hulu to add more episodes, and I even rewatch some episodes when I'm traveling just to see which places I want to go out to eat. The number 3 spot is Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, and again, this does come from a mainly US perspective, so if you want to travel internationally, I would not watch this show. Guy Fieri does go to, I think, Cuba and Spain in a few episodes, so if you are interested in those locations, I would definitely watch those episodes, but it's mainly domestic. Yes, again, it is food focused, but I think it could show you what the US has to offer in terms of the various food cultures that are here. And honestly, he tends to stay on the West Coast, but he does go to the East Coast. He goes to the central region of the US, and it really shows you what different types of foods you could have at an inexpensive cost. And I think that's what I like about it. It's diners, drive-ins, and dives. It's not, you know, like I said earlier, a Michelin star restaurant. It's not something where you're gonna pay over $200 or $300 for you and a few friends to go out to eat. It's something that is very affordable, and I think this helps local restaurateurs kind of grow and prosper in their popularity. When you're running a restaurant, I think it's hard to focus on the marketing aspect outside of your town or city. And I think Guy Fieri knows this, and he goes to these places so that he could literally put them on the map. And he does this episode series where he goes and checks in on these places after he goes. And literally all of these restaurants have exploded in terms of their business. There was this one where it was a seafood restaurant and they only had one floor. Now they have an outdoor area. They have 2 or 3 levels. They do various parties and events. And they really tell Guy how from his presence and from him going there and exposing them to, more than just their locality, that he really has changed their lives. And I think this is extremely important when it comes to travel because your dollars really do count. You as a consumer, when you go somewhere and you spend money at a restaurant or a local business or a shop or whatever the case may be, you really are affecting somebody's life whether you know it or not. And I think this show really helps you realize, hey, instead of going to the Chili's that I know or the Olive Garden that I know, I kind of want to go to that place that Guy Fieri went to because it looked delicious. And you go and you help local business owners, and then you also get a taste of the food culture. Because the thing about chains is, maybe it varies from region to region, but overall the menu does stay the same, and you're helping a corporation in that sense. Whereas Guy Fieri is like, no, go to these places that have been open for a good amount of time, are owned by local people, and you'll get a flavor of that city or town that you're traveling to. And I think that's extremely important when it comes to travel. It is food oriented, but honestly, you do get a experience when you go out to eat. That's why people go out to eat. They want to have an experience. They want to have a memory that they're going to bring home with them. And diners, drive-ins, and dives won't break the bank. They're unique places, and the food is always delicious. So you could always count on this show when, hey, if you're going to Austin, Texas, or you're going to Savannah, Georgia, or you're going to, I think, Plymouth, I think it's Massachusetts, you could watch those certain episodes and see, hey, I want to go there, I want to try it. And that in and of itself is an activity that you could do. So that's my number 3 spot. I always have a sweet spot for Guy Fieri. He's just a cool guy, and I think it's great that he exposes these local businesses to the outside perspective so that when you travel, it still sticks in your mind. So let's get into the number 2 spot, and I'm excited for number 1 as well, but number 2, we'll get. So my number 2 spot was an unexpected show that I just decided on a whim, hey, let me just watch it. Let's see what it's about. I didn't really expect it to be travel oriented. So my number 2 travel show is Restaurants on the Edge, and this could be streamed on Netflix. And honestly, I just thought it was, 3 experts who go in and help a restaurant, and that's about it. But it's not just that. And I think the name is very unique, and also the name has 2 meanings. So it's about a chef, an interior designer, and a restaurateur who go into restaurants that are literally on the edge in 2 ways. They're on the edge of an environmental feature, so usually a coast or a mountain or something like that. And then also, they're on the edge of closing down. So that's why I like the name. I think what really makes the show is the way that it's filmed. I think they use drones or some sort of aerial footage, but it really shows the beauty and importance of the location and how that influences the restaurant and how that should influence the restaurant. So my favorite episode, they covered this restaurant in Malta. And Malta is an island in the Mediterranean Sea, I think right off of Italy, maybe a little further. But I never knew it existed before this show. And the way they shot this footage made me want to go there. It felt like I was there, but it really inspired me to look into this island. This was before the pandemic, and see what there is to do there, because the way they portrayed the region was beautiful in both an environmental aspect and a city aspect. So for example, I think the chef, he goes to these local salt farms, and he goes and sees how they cultivate salt from the ocean. Then the interior designer goes with a architect or a historical architect, something like that. And she looks at how the architecture of Malta can influence this gentleman's restaurant. And then the restaurateur goes around and tries to find people who market restaurants, journalists, and he goes to local restaurants and sees what they have to offer, because all of these things should influence the restaurant that you own. They really take into consideration the culture and beauty of the location and how that should influence the restaurant, and I absolutely love that. Like I said before, for diners, drive-ins, and dives, your restaurant should be influenced by the location, but I also think it goes the other way as well, right? You don't really want to go to a place where it's like, oh, I could just have this at home. I want to go to a place where, yeah, I want to have food that is an everyday staple in Malta. You know, I don't want to have an American cheeseburger when I'm, you know, in Malta. So I think they really do a good job of showing the beauty of the place, and it really feels as though you are there. And I love that about this travel show. My eyes are glued to the screen the whole entire time. I could envision myself swimming in the ocean, you know, eating in the restaurant, going through the markets. You could see how local people shop. You could see how local people eat. And I'm very interested in that. So I think this is a great show if you love food, if you want to see a geographic location done in an aesthetically pleasing way. And it also helps you realize places maybe that you've never thought of before, right? Because they're helping restaurants, and usually these restaurants are not in places that you would automatically think of to go to. So overall, I think it's a great show. Definitely watch it. Let's get into the number one spot. Okay, so are there any guesses for the number one spot? Well, the number one spot is Anthony Bourdain, No Reservations. And so this was another show that I think consistently was recommended to me, but I didn't watch it for a good amount of time because as a kid, it's hard to understand the message he's trying to convey. But as you get older, you realize, hey, that maybe this is something I should watch. And I haven't watched Parts Unknown, and I've heard good things about that. But I've been watching No Reservations, and you could stream this on Hulu. I think there's only season 7 and 8, but it still gives you a glimpse at what Anthony Bourdain is all about. What I like about him is that he travels to places you would normally wouldn't think of. And he does not do the touristy thing. You know, he's not going to like, you know, Disneyland or Disney World or going to the Eiffel Tower in Paris. He's doing the non-touristy things, and I think that's what I like about him. It's something that you normally wouldn't do or maybe wouldn't even feel comfortable doing. But he really wants to see how the locals live and operate. And he kind of knows how to not infiltrate the location that he's going to and kind of just absorb everything around him. There are some travel hosts who do not do a good job of this. They go into the place and you can kind of tell they're an outsider, and they kind of try to pry and see what's going on and bring their outsider perspective. What Anthony Bourdain does really well is that he's kind of like a chameleon. He kind of changes based on the location that he's going to, but not in the sense to be fake, but in the sense to make sure that he's respecting the people of the location he's traveling to. So he tries food and drink at various restaurants, and it feels very authentic. It feels as though you're like his best friend, just going and traveling with him. It's like, hey, you want to go to Cambodia? Yeah, sure, let's go. And then you're going with him, and he's narrating, and I think that's really what makes it, is that he's talking to you. You know, he's telling you his thoughts while he's in a certain place. I also like that he shows you the problems within a certain region or location. He isn't sugarcoating it. He's not like, oh yeah, this was the best vacation ever, and, you know, I'm gonna flex on Instagram and show all my friends. No, he's staying in local places, talking to local people, and not doing the touristy thing. So he's really understanding how the locals live day to day and kind of the problems that tourism causes or just historical kind of problems and how that is relevant today. So an example I could think of was he went to Haiti. And, you know, from an American perspective, Haiti has gone through a lot. There are people who decide not to go there for that reason. And he goes and he decides to go to a street vendor and he orders food. I think it was him and a friend. And there are people starting to crowd around him. And he's wondering why. But he knows it's because of the cameras. But then he realizes it's because he's eating food. He's realizing that people are hungry and he could feel everybody stare at him. So he decides to do the nice thing. He's like, okay, I'm gonna buy food for everybody. But then he realizes he just did something wrong. In the fact that people start fighting over the food, and the stronger, bigger kids or bigger adults start to push out the younger kids and they start to fight. And obviously, if you're bigger and stronger, you're gonna win. And he relates this to the classic kind of US thing to do, which is, hey, we'll give you money. We'll help fund you. donate to this charity. But then what happens is the local people start to fight over this, and you're not really solving the problem at the root cause. You're just putting a band-aid over the wound, and the wound is never healing. You're not fixing the systemic problems of the country. You're just kind of like, hey, here's money. We're not gonna let you, you know, be entrepreneurial or open your own businesses, but we'll just give you money and hope that helps. And I really love how he connects his situations in regard to travel to problems that are going on within that region or location, and how that's connected to the US perspective. So this is not one I would watch if you're looking for something lighthearted. He does talk about heavy hitting problems, and he doesn't offer solutions, but rather just presents to you the problems as they are in the moment, and you could do what you would like with them. And I think that's what I like about him. He's not too pushy. He's not trying to convince you to do something or help a country, or you know, to go to that country even. He's just showing you his experiences, and you could do what you want with them. And it's unfortunate that he passed away, but he really did a good job with his shows, and I'm hoping I can see Parts Unknown soon. But honestly, No Reservations is one of those shows that really opens up your mind to the problems of a certain region, and also how the locals live without having a pretentious sort of vibe, right? He kind of just goes in and does his thing, and I like that, because sometimes people are intimidated by travel because they think it's super expensive, or you have to look a certain way or be a certain way, and it doesn't have to be like that. It could just be you going on a plane just wanting to explore another place, going through like he does, and just seeing how the locals live, and not really having a specific plan, but rather just seeing where the ride takes you. So overall, these are my top favorite best travel shows. Let me know in the comments what your favorite TV show is when it comes to travel. Make sure you like this video, make sure that you subscribe and hit the notification bell, and thank you so much for watching. Until next time, y'all.